again now, so that when poor Alan has to do all the editing and chop all the videos up, he has some time to play with.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Great.
Juggling a gazillion windows here, man.
Rather good than me. I'm just going to take a little look at who we've got joined. Yeah, we'll give it a minute or two because we're ahead of time. So when we get to 12, I'll give you a little introduction and then we can kick off. How would you like to do questions?
Keep them towards the end, just so we can keep the kind of flow. I'll probably end up like losing my flow if I get questions mid-flight. Happy to take them in the chat window and answer them at the end. Yeah,
we can do that. Me and Hugo will make sure that we keep an eye on the chat for questions.
Sweet.
I see we've got some people in the chat. Hey everyone, drop in the chat where you're from. We can say hello. Yeah, we've still got people joining now, so yay! Someone else in Scotland.
Yeah.
Nice.
Awesome. Okay, we'll just give it a wee bit longer, and then we'll do the intro, and we can kick off.
Sounds good.
People might be switching between things. No one else wants to share where they're from. Okay, let's kick off. Oh, London, Dublin, by way of Lincolnshire. Awesome. Okay, right, let's kick off. Okay, welcome everybody to track 3 of Global Azure, the UK and Ireland edition. Although that said, we've got people from all over, so that's brilliant, loving it. Up next, we've got Jamie Maguire, who's going to talk to us about bot frameworks and give us an introduction to them. Can I ask you all to please go on mute? If you have any questions throughout the session, just put them in the chat, and me and my co-host Hugo will pitch them to Jamie at the end, or you can ask them yourselves at the end. So with that, I will hand over to Jamie.
Okay, thanks for the introduction. Hi everybody, thanks for taking time at your weekend. I know everybody's time's valuable and stuff like that. My name's Jamie Maguire. I'm a senior developer by trade really, and I'm also an MVP in AI, as well as being a STEM ambassador and Code Club volunteer. I've been working with .NET for since the very first release really. However, for the last, I'd say 2 to 3, 4 years, I've been deep in Azure Cognitive Services and the bot framework. In terms of like my AI experience, my AI journey goes back to about 2014, where I was building APIs based on something called Bayesian theorem, which is often used in machine learning models. And what these APIs were all about were being able to surface the underlying emotion and stronger topics being expressed in social media data. But enough about that. What I'm here to share today is a little bit about a bot framework and its main components. And I've sort of split this session up into 3 micro sessions, if you will. So the first one's going to be an introduction to the bot framework and natural language understanding, and how we can add natural language understanding capability to our chatbots. After we've looked at a demo of that, to be more specific, Lewis, what we'll then do is we'll dive into Visual Studio and we'll see how a chatbot and its main components all hang together and what those building blocks are. And all of that will be within the context of a flight booking chatbot, right? And then after we've had a run through that and tested it using some local tooling, what we'll then do is we'll see how we can publish that chatbot to Azure and then perform some further testing to make sure that our chatbot is indeed working in the cloud. Okay. So first things first, really, what is the bot framework, right? Well, the bot framework is a set of tools and services and SDKs that let you build conversational applications such as chatbots and what have you. And you've got a few different options and tooling at your disposal in terms of actually achieving that. So you can choose to, code your bot from the ground up using like the open source SDK, or you can drag and drop your way through chatbot development using tools like Bot Framework Composer or Power VA. And after you've done all of that and you've designed it and you've built it, you can then, host that chatbot and surface it in different channels, right? Now, a channel being something like a website, which is probably one of the most common ones, or something like Facebook Messenger, or even Amazon Alexa, okay? Now, you don't have to start from the ground up. So the bot Azure bot service and the bot framework ships with some other services and tooling, such as the Q&A maker. So if you're running a business or an organization that is sitting on a whole load of digital assets, such as PDFs, Word documents, or even information contained in your website, well, what you can do is you can point the Azure the Azure Q&A maker service at those assets and then ingest those. And then out the other end, you'll get a chatbot that you can ask questions and answers and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. It's a good way to get started. Over and above all of that, with it sitting in the Microsoft Cloud, it's got chatbots have got native integration to Azure Cognitive Services, okay? And that's just massive. There's about 30 or 40 APIs that you can basically fuse into your chatbot to augment its functionality. So some of the things that you can do is apply text analytics to then identify the human's underlying emotion in terms of how they're communicating with that bot. Is it positive? Is it negative? And then you can build some business rules in and around that logic. Other ideas or options that you've got is by deploying the computer vision APIs, and with those, users may have the option of uploading images and pictures, and using computer vision, the intelligence behind that can then identify objects, facial recognition, and items that exist in the content that's being shared with the chatbot. So that's a quick overview of the framework itself, okay? But what are the main components in a chatbot itself? So we've got some of them here. I won't go in, I'll just touch on these at a very high level because we're gonna explore these in a little bit more detail very soon. So a controller, for the web developers in the audience, they will be familiar with the MVC controller pattern. It's kind of similar here in that any incoming requests from a human to the chatbot get routed through the controller. The messages that get sent backwards and forwards between the chatbot and the human are done in what's called activities. And activities can be one of many types, right? These activities in this communication typically takes place in what are called dialogues. And you can think of dialogues as being the building blocks of your conversational logic, right? So, and it's good practice really to, like break down your logic into, sections of discrete dialogues. There's adapters and custom adapters. And what these are all about are taking the incoming request from the human and routing that request to the logic that's responsible for handling that and transforming it. So what does that mean, right? So by default, a lot of chatbots sit in the web and websites, so you can just use the default adapter. And that information will come through the adapter and hit the bot framework, and it'll be fine. And the bot can work with that. However, if you want to integrate a bot with Alexa, say, you have to build an interface to that, and that's where custom adapters come in. So you can then expose or surface your chatbot's logic in other channels. And that leads on to the last part, really, and we've kind of discussed on what channels are, really. They're just areas or applications that your chatbot can be surfaced in, okay? Touched on activities, it's worth mentioning them in a little bit more detail here. So the most very basic kind of activity is just a message, which we can see up at the top here. It just says welcome. That's just a string that gets sent backwards and forwards. However, you've got quite a lot of opportunities here in terms of the assets that you can create and that you can then go on to serve to the human at the other end. So just this slide here over to the left, you can see we've got some pictures and different font types and different buttons and stuff. How do you get all that information? Well, that JSON or code extract that you can see there is responsible for rendering that content. Now, you don't have to create that JSON by hand, because that would just be a nightmare, right? There's like a little JSON builder online that you can use to do that, or you get the option of doing it using C# code at the server side, which makes it a little bit more extensible. And we touched on dialogues, but I need to explain these in a little bit more detail, because we're going to dive into these in Visual Studio later on. So for anybody that's new to chatbot development, you can think of dialogues as being like screens in a regular application. So whether it be, you know, a ASP.NET Core app or PHP or whatever it is, say you wanted to perform a flight booking, well, you may have a main screen and then another screen that gets invoked when the user clicks new booking, okay? Well, in the chatbot world, it's no different, but we've got this abstraction called a dialogue. And a dialogue is just a container for a series of steps that a user can perform with a chatbot to help it interact with it. Common pattern is to have a main dialogue, and then based on some fancy natural language understanding is to break out into a dialogue that handles, say, bookings or ordering food or making other types of booking. Okay, and it's just a good way to structure your conversation when you're modeling your chatbot, right? But within each dialogue can be built up of, as we said earlier, it's various steps. So what do I mean by that, right? So what this slide is trying to show really is that at the root level, we have the dialogue itself, but within each dialogue, we can have what's called a waterfall dialogue, okay? It gets its name because, you know, waterfall runs from top to bottom. So within each waterfall, you have a bunch of steps. It could be one to as many as you need, okay? Now, each step may ask the user for some text, and that's where the prompts come in, or it could be a number, a confirm choice, yes or no, and then there's various other ones that you can use to sort of build up that richness in terms of the questions that the chatbot can ask the human, right? And this is typically the way that you would model your dialogues. So, you know, design it up front, have a think about the dialogues that you need, and then model out the prompts and stuff that are needed. And that's what all that blue stuff is there. The component one is just trying to represent the custom components that you can build. So for argument's sake, a booking dialogue, right? But up at the top right here in green, we've got this new technology called adaptive. Now, I've been doing quite a lot with this, and it's very extensible and very, very powerful, right? So, and what this is all about is it uses JSON files and schemas to hydrate regular dialogues at runtime. Over and above all of that, you can do it, you know, by hand, or you can use a tool called Bot Framework Composer. Okay, so if you're less technical, or say you might be a business analyst, well, you can sit in a web browser and drag and drop your way through your dialogue creation and then ship that over to a developer to integrate. I've blogged quite a bit about that, so you can check out my blog if that's something that you're interested in, or you can check on the Composer website that Microsoft have got on GitHub. Really recommend it. So we've introduced the bot framework, the building blocks, and the way that you can structure dialogues and the main components. But how does all of this hang together, right? So if you imagine a user's first interaction with a chatbot, they may say something like hi. That activity would be sent over to the respective channel endpoint. The bot framework service is then going to pick that up, and then depending on the type of channel that it's came in through, it's going to be routed onto the respective adapter, which in turn is going to fire something called an on-turn method. Now, what does that mean? Well, it's kind of this abstraction is based on the idea that everybody takes their turn when they're having a conversation, right? So the human takes their turn, and then when the bot responds, it takes its turn. So that's what we can see here in this sequence diagram. And this is a pattern that just gets used, so, you know, throughout the whole conversational life cycle. So the user comes in, it gets processed, and then it gets a response back from the chatbot. And now that's all fine and well for just simple messages and text and all that sort of thing, but we need our bots to have more intelligence about the way that they process messages, okay? And that's a tough problem to solve, or it has been up until now. And this is where the area of natural language processing comes into play. Fortunately, you don't have to, you didn't need the PhD in linguistics to implement this stuff now. We've got a service, and I've been using this quite a bit recently, called LUIS, which is the Language Understanding Intelligence Service, right? And what this is based on, like 2 to 3 main concepts, really. So, and I'll explain what's happening here in this diagram. So a user supplies a sentence, which is known as an utterance. Okay, it gets fed through the LUIS supercomputer, and then out the other end, it takes that pseudo-structured information from the human, and then out the other end, it generates structured information that the machine can then understand, right? So that's what we can see here. We can see a user has supplied an utterance called "book me a flight to Cairo," and then out the other end, LUIS has identified the user's query. The next part of structured information is the intent, called book flight, and then we get a confidence scoring, right? Just on that note, intents are something that you can create multiple instances of, and we're going to see that in a little minute soon. The confidence scoring is how confident LUIS believes that the user is indeed trying to book a flight, and I think we can all agree that that is indeed what the user's expressing here. So with all of that theory out of the way, right, what I would like to do next is show everybody on the call how we can build a language model very quickly in LUIS. So here is one I prepared earlier. So this is the LUIS dashboard, okay? And what you do is you create your LUIS application, and I've got one here that's going to kind of model the concept of booking a flight, right? So I'm going to click on this link here. So I've created the app, and then we get taken to the language models landing page. And this is just a dashboard where you can get some diagnostics and telemetry on how much usage and stuff the language model has received, right? But to build your model, you have to click on build here, right? And we're taken to this screen, and these are the intents. So what's an intent? Well, that's the thing that the user or the human actually wants to perform. So in the context of performing flight bookings, we would like to have an intent that lets the user book a flight. We may have another one there, get weather. We may have another one called greeting. And when we've created our intents, we then have to let LUIS know what are some typical examples of those intents. So if we jump into the greeting intent, we've just got a simple one in here that says hi, right? We can add another one here by saying hello. It updates LUIS. And then we can add, the recommendation is 20 to 30 sample utterances per intent. You can then train the language model. It's going to do its bit. I'm going to crunch the model here. After it's done that, you can then test it. So you can do that by clicking test up here. So we can test this utterance, right? So we can say hello. Hello there. Now, look, we get a response back from the test window. Down towards the bottom here, we can see that the underlying intent has been identified as being greeting. Remember, we've got others such as get weather and book flight and stuff. Not the confidence scoring, no, right? It's only, 0.12, not the highest, but it's still there. So for us to get that up, we'd have to give it like some examples. Now, the examples, they don't have to be accurate, right? And that's where the real power comes in. Because if you think about it, if you were trying to do this as a developer, you would only be able to get so far using, say, regex or string manipulation and all that sort of thing. LUIS does a lot of the lifting for you. It removes a lot of the noise words or stop words, as they're called, and then it works out the orientation of the words, and then it figures out based on the relationship between the words what the best suited intent is based on your training data that you've supplied to it, right? We'll jump out here. We'll go back into the intents. And then we'll jump into the book flight intent, right? This one's got a little bit more going on. So what we are interested in doing here is modeling a chatbot that can take holiday bookings. So we may have some sample intents that say, I want to go to the airport. I want to go to, say Paris or Spain or New York or wherever. So we've seeded this language model with examples of this. These items in blue and green are what are called entities. And these are just placeholders for areas in the strings that we would expect entities to exist in those supplied utterances by the user. So the user could say, I want to go to this airport. I want to go to New York, I want to fly from X to Y on this date and time. Okay, and just like we've seen in the greeting intent, we can go on and test all that. So after you've built your language model and you've trained it and you're happy with the accuracy, what you can then do is publish that, right? And just by clicking publish, we do that, and then we get publishing complete, right? And then we publish it to the production endpoint as well, just for completeness. When that happens, you get a set of you get an app ID and an app key, and it's at this point you've done the first part, right? You've created your language model. The next thing that we've got to do is integrate this language model into a chatbot, and that's what we're going to see next. So in this second part of this session, we're going to integrate the language understanding model. It's going to be within the context of booking a flight. And what we'll do is we'll look through some of the key classes, and then we'll run the chatbot, and then we'll test it in a tool called the Bot Framework Emulator, right? So we'll dive out the slide deck, and I'm going to jump into Visual Studio. And what we've got here is a simple chatbot that lets us, perform some flight bookings. So we're looking at a class here called Startup. We've got 4 classes open here. Ain't going to go through it line by line, but the key things that we have to set up are the Lewis recognizer and the dialogues that we want our chatbot to handle. And when we've got those in play, we can then start to build out some of the other logic, right? So the first thing that we'll take a closer look at is the flight booking recognizer. And then here, I just touched on it earlier, when we've published our Lewis app, we have to take the app ID, the key, and then the host. And that's just in the Azure instance in terms of where your NLP model is housed. So that could be HTTPS, blah, 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 Western US, so on and so forth, right? When you've closed the chatbot instance, that's you connected your Lewis application, all that richness that the language model gives you to your chatbot. And as I say, the next thing is to set up the actual dialogues themselves. Now, the first one that a user is going to hit is the main dialogue. And if I scroll up to the top here, we can see under the hood of what actually is involved in the dialogue. So we're setting up some prompts. We're telling the main dialogue that we want this main dialogue to be able to call out to the booking dialogue at one point. And here we can see we've got the waterfall dialogue that we touched on at the first part of the session, okay? We've got 3 steps in this waterfall: intro step, action step, and then final step. If we take a little bit down here, we can see that the first thing that this bot's going to say is, what can I help you with today? Okay, say something. And then after it takes that information, it reads it into this value here called prompt message. And that then gets is used to set up the prompt, which would display the what can I help you with today. When the user supplies a bit of text, and this is where the Lewis magic happens. So in the second step, we're going to break out into the Lewis application in the cloud. Lewis will return an object that's got, some structured data about the user supplied utterance. Now, it may or it may not have that, and that's what we'll see when we run this application. So if you think back to what we looked at in the Lewis application, we had an intent to handle booking flights. We had one about getting weather, and then we had a greeting intent as well, okay? Now, the one to book flight tries to get data from the Lewis result object. So if the user supplies, a destination and an originating airport, then those values will be read back. And if they supply a travel date, that will also be set. What then happens is that information is then passed through into a new dialogue called booking dialogue. So we begin a new dialogue passing in the booking details, okay? And then when we look into the booking dialogue, this is where we start asking the user a bunch of questions about where do they want to go, where are they flying from, what are the dates, is this information correct, yes or no. So we can see here, this first step, where do you want to go? We're reading out the booking details from the main dialogue. If they've supplied a destination, then we I'm sorry, if they haven't supplied a destination, we have to ask them for it, okay? However, if they have supplied the destination, we just skip on to the next step. And that's also a good pattern to implement, right? So I won't go through all the other bits, but those are sort of like the main building blocks. So the next thing that we'll do, now that we've run through the building blocks and connected up the Lewis application is that we'll run this chatbot. So it's just like any other application that we just run in Visual Studio. And what will happen will be we'll get a landing page that pops up that just lets us know that the bot is ready and running. And then to test this locally, we use a tool called the Bot Framework Emulator, which is what I'm loaded up here. And then what you do is you connect to the endpoint, so we can see that this is the channel and the endpoint. So we'll just connect to that. And now our chatbot's sprung into life. So we can try saying something like, hi. We'll see breakpoints being invoked in Visual Studio. So the intent has been picked up by Lewis. So if we quickly inspect that object here, we can see well, there's one intent. We've identified that it's greeting. And the confidence scoring is 0.90, so with higher accuracy. And we're just sending a message back to the user, right? Saying, what else can what else can we do for you? But let's tap into the booking logic, okay? So to do that, we could just say something like book a flight. So we've hit another breakpoint. So this time it's the flight booking intent. Now, we haven't told the bot, I want to fly from X to here on this date. So we don't have any values here, right? So what's going to happen is like when the booking dialog gets ran, it's going to start asking us for those questions. And we can see that here. So the destination is null. We're going to set up a prompt. Where would you like to travel to? And then our chatbot's going to wait for the user's response. Where would you like to travel to? So I could say New York, let's say Newcastle. When would you like to travel? I could say tomorrow, okay. And we've got a little bit of magic going on with the date, so using like timex components to figure that date out. Then we get the confirm prompt. And is this correct? We'll just say yes. And then, this is just a fictitious thing, obviously, but we could make a call out to a REST API at that point, integrate with another provider to then go ahead and make the booking or what have you, right? So that just shows us a quick way of how we can test our bots, and then we've just looked at the main components that are involved in a chatbot. So we've got the startup class where we provision all of the main dialogue and services that we want to use. We've got the recognizer, which is the glue between the natural language understanding model and the chatbot itself. And then we've got the dialogues with the respective prompts that are used to guide the user through the conversation. So with all that out of the way, the language model, the chatbot, the next thing that you want to do after you've built your chatbot is publish it online so other people can use it. So to do that, it's just like any other application. You just publish it in Azure. You can do it like this, or you could set up some continuous integration DevOps type working environment and push it up in there periodically. I've already created this, so I've already got the resources set up, but I'm just going to publish it here, and that'll just take a few moments. And then when it's published, we're going to get another landing page like we did before. And it's just loading up. So our bot is now published into Azure. So with this in play, we can then start to test this thing using the Azure portal. So what I'd like to do now is hop out of this and then jump into the Azure portal. And I've already got this window opened here. So I shall open this here. We've got a bunch of resources. One thing that I haven't demoed is the bot channels registration. Now this is just like a default resource that you can set up, but we need that, right? In fact, I'll take a quick dive into this just to show you what's in there. So when you create this in Azure, what you have to do is go into your settings, and then down at the messaging endpoint, you have to paste in the endpoint where your bot lives in Azure. So that's what we just published, okay? So you would grab that and paste it in there. But this is an endpoint that lets us now test this thing in Azure. So we can see the messaging endpoint up here. So we can test it by testing web chat. And our bot should spring into life. And it has. So we've got our adaptive card, we've got the welcome message, and we can just test that Lewis is firing up by invoking the greeting intent. You could say, I want to try that. So this time it hasn't asked us. It hasn't asked us for the destination because we've already supplied that. So Lewis has intersected that and figured out that there's an entity in there that's the destination, okay? I can say, I'll just say tomorrow. And then we get the general idea here, okay? And that's a good practice to do. So when you built your bot and you published it, dive into Azure and test it in the web chat, right? When you're comfortable that it's tested in the web chat, it's generally good to go and host in your website. Now, how do you do that? Well, there's a few different ways that you can do it. The quickest and simplest way is actually by clicking on the channels link, and you can see we've got our default channel of web chat. Again, you get that out of the box, and then you can click on get bot embed codes. Now, we click on this link here, and you're taken to this web chat configuration screen. If you take a little bit of a look down towards this section here, you can see there's like some basic script, right? And you've got to take your secret key, paste it in here, and then that will render the web chat component in a web page for you. Now that's the quickest way to do it. There's other ways that you can do it by using a technology called the direct line, and that can be invoked via JavaScript. So you can, get into the nuts and bolts of it all by making JavaScript calls and then bringing in the raw JS files that are responsible for rendering your bot. It's a little bit more involved, but if you just want to get up running and quickly to prototype something, this is just a quick way to do it. So you can take that script, dump it into an HTML page, and that's what I'll quickly show everybody just now, right? So because we're making good time here. So we're going to jump out of this here, and then what I've got is a web page, right? This is just sitting on my local machine, and if we take a look at the code behind this web page, it's just a regular HTML page, but you can see I've embedded the bot script, and we've just got some bootstrap format in here just to kind of make it easier to visualize. That's all we've had to do here. When we do that, we get a nice little chat window. Just in terms of the chat window, you've got a load of options in terms of the styling out of the box. So, and it depends how deep you want to go with the web chat component. If you just use, let's say, the iframe and some of the basic scripting options, naturally you don't get as many configuration options. The other option that you've got is that you can take the code, which is available on open source on GitHub, and style it yourself, okay? And you get full control over the look and feel and the UX. So we can interact with the chatbot again, and we get a response back. Hi, book a flight. I could say Spain, Newcastle, and we get the confirm prompt and stuff like that. Okay, so, and that's it, right? So we covered quite a bit there in just over 30 minutes. So what we've seen is an introduction to the bot framework, and we have seen how we can model natural language understanding using Lewis, and how we can build out the complexity of Lewis using entities, and how that data can be picked apart by your chatbot as well, based on the information that gets supplied by the user. We've seen how we can quickly publish a chatbot into Azure and test it. And then finally, we've seen how we can take some simple script from the Azure portal and then host that in a website to let us get confidence that our chatbot is ready to be hosted within a website. So with that, I'd like to open up the session to any questions or answers that people have got. And I just want to thank everybody for their time. And yeah, that's it. So thank you.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks, Jamie. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Lisa. Sorry.
That's all right. Does anyone have any questions? I'm just checking the chat.
No questions so far, I think so.
No.
I actually have a question for you, Jamie.
Sure.
So as you know, Microsoft has been investing on Power Virtual Agents to allow people, to enable people to build bots with no code. So comparing these to bot framework, what would you recommend to people to, in which scenarios, use one or other?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the way that I see this stuff is that you've got three options, right? So at the lower level, you've got the bot framework, which is that's aimed at developers, okay? And you've got full control over the SDK and the stuff that you can build. The next level up, you've got Bot Framework Composer. It was just released to the public a few weeks ago. And that's for slightly technical users. And you can, using a web app, you can just drag and drop your way through chatbot development, but you've still got like programmatic control to some of the data and logic. So if you need a little bit of customization, you can use that. And then at the top of the chain, I'd see you've got Power VA for business users at the business end. And you can still do quite a bit with that. So for like business analysts, I see Power VA as being like a low-code solution that can also integrate with data sets in Excel and stuff like that. So that's how I see those three technologies.
That's really good. Well, since we have no more questions on the channel, I have actually another question for you. So on the Power Virtual Agents, they allow you to easily provide the source with questions and answers to load to your bot. So on the bot framework, do you have the same ability to parse any kind of file or something with questions and answers and feed your bot with these questions?
Yeah, you do. So what happens is quite a common pattern is to build your bot, have Lewis at the front end to infer the underlying intent, and then when it gets handed over to the respective dialogue, what will happen will be if the dialogues can't answer the question, then what you can do is almost like a third line of defense or a fallback plan is to use the Q&A maker service, and the user can then engage with the Q&A maker service and ask it questions. So in that Q&A maker service, what you can do with that is you can point that at the FAQs on your website, PDFs, Word documents, and various other assets that you've got that are information rich that you may or may not have time to code dialogues in and around those. I believe that can also be integrated with Power VA. I haven't yet experimented with that.
That's really good. Yeah. As far as I know, on the documentation, it's possible to integrate existing bots on the bot framework with Power Virtual Agents.
Yeah. I'd really recommend Adaptive. Adaptive's so powerful. I'm actively using it right now. So I've got a situation where I'm building the low-level dialogues using the SDK, and then see for the dialogues that don't need as much complexity, we're using Bot Framework Composer for less technical users. They then export the assets from Composer, and I've built, like a glue of sorts that can take the assets from Composer and load those in at runtime for the chatbot to then use.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Well, we have apparently, we have no more questions on the channel. I don't know if anybody wants to unmute and make a question. Okay, so should we move to the next session? What do you think, Lisa?
Aidan's he was in the chat, but he's just left. I think we should probably just keep it to till 2 because people will be expecting to join at that time. So let's just have a talk about the agenda, what's on the other channels and what's coming up. And I might take this as an opportunity to stop the recording and start again.
Yeah. Let me just share. Can I share the screen and talk about the agenda?
Yep, sure. Go for it. Thank you, Jamie.
Cool. Cheers, everybody.
Let me know when you can see my screen.
Yep, I can see your screen.
Okay, so as you know, we have 3 live tracks running. On the track 1, we will have at 2 p.m. we will have the contract management with Power Apps and AI Builder, provided by Sharon. On the track 2, we have DevOps plus infrastructure as code, provided by Damien. And in this track, of course, we have trust no code security for service and data, provided by Aidan. So that's the agenda for now.
Yep, I'll share the links to each of the track in the chat so that people can easily jump between them if they want. And then what I will do is I will pause, I'll stop the recording here.